All right. The second 5-minute pause seems to have worked. Everybody's checked in that wanted to be here on time. So if folks in the back of the room can find a seat, settle in, we can get started. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who were not here last night for the first night of annual town meeting, my name is Dennis Reap, and I am the elected town moderator. I hereby call for the reconvening of the adjourned session of annual town meeting of the town of Boxborough from last night. We've completed the business of the special town meeting and the annual town meeting articles 2 through 41 and 43 as of last night. We have 3 articles left to go. The same rules and procedural motions from last night still apply. Please note, we do have the marked chairs tonight along the aisles behind each microphone. These chairs are provided for people waiting in line at the mics. Refreshments in the back are being provided again by the Friends of the Library. Per our procedural vote last night, we will begin tonight with a motion under Article 42, please.
I move that the town transfer from free cash the sum of $500,000 for the purpose of procuring professional design and owner's project manager services related to the construction of a new fire station, including all costs incidental and related thereto.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Presentation from the Select Board.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today about Article 42, which is for hiring an owner's project manager and other professional services for building our new fire station. The request is for you to vote to fund $500K from free cash to hire owner's project manager and professional services. We need this amount to study the viability of 4 different sites and get recommendations on the pros and the cons. Slide. Sorry. I'm doing this for the first time, sorry. We need to get the recommendations on the pros and the cons, come up with the detailed size estimate, conceptual design, and accurate cost estimate that you can vote on during the next town meeting. This article was voted unanimously by the Building Committee, Finance Committee, and the Select Board. I also want to take this opportunity to explain the confusion that we, the Building Committee, created by initially voting for the $500K for hiring both the OPM and other professional services, and then paring it down to $250K to include only professional services without the OPM, but then finally reverting back to the original proposal of the $500K to include both services. This was because we did our due diligence after we pared down the amount by visiting the Littleton Fire Station and meeting with the vice chair of their building committee and their deputy chief, who spearheaded the building in building their fire station just a few years back. Our question to them was, should we wait to hire an OPM till we finalize a site? Their recommendation was for us to hire an OPM right away. The feedback was that an OPM is essential for site and size selection, direct the consulting firms to include all essential items, and at the same time avoiding redundancies and saving us cost. They also quoted the example of Groton, where avoiding hiring an OPM was delayed, which in turn delayed the project by 2 years, escalating their cost. So it was apparent after that visit that our original recommendation for $500K for both the services was appropriate thing to do right from the beginning. So the committee voted unanimously for the $500K to include both the services. In terms of the Select Board vote, the original vote was unanimous for the $500K to include both the services, and the subsequent one for the $250K was split, thus leaving their original vote for the $500K in place. This article is not about a particular site, a particular size, land purchase, or construction funding. Why do we need a new fire station? The current fire station built in the 50s has fully depreciated and cannot be retrofitted or rebuilt to current codes and standards. After visiting both the Littleton Fire Station and our own, the poor condition and safety issues of our fire station became apparent to me. It lacks basic health safety standards like separate decontamination and cleaning areas. So when our firefighters are exposed to hazardous materials, they cannot decontaminate and clean themselves in separate areas. That can affect their health as well as the health of those around them. There are no isolation areas. Their bunk rooms are divided by cloth screens. These are major health concerns that impact our employee health. Also, there is hardly any space between our trucks that when there needs to be an emergency response, our firefighters cannot rush at a time to get on their gears and get into their vehicles and drive out. Right now, their gear storage cannot be accessed by multiple staff at the same time. They cannot get into their vehicle with their turnout gears at the same time. They need to go single file, sideways, to prevent getting hurt, to get into their vehicles. Plus, trying to maintain and repair a building where each and every aspect of it is falling apart is extremely costly and overall unsafe. What is an owner's project manager? Okay. It is required by state law for any project over $250K. It is for the entirety of the project with the building committee oversight. They assist in moving the project along efficiently while keeping the town on budget and on schedule. They help with the project in terms of determining site, size, cost, and value engineering. Even though it's required by state law, some of you might ask, do we need them right away, or can we hire them at a later time? As I explained initially, it is recommended to hire them right away to prevent any duplication of services and waste. In the past, over a 10-year period, the town bypassed hiring an OPM and instead directly funded multiple engineering and architectural studies costing close to $200K. Yet, we are still without any clarity about site, size, or cost. We don't want to repeat the same mistakes again. This time around, it would be wise for us to hire an OPM who can assist with recommendations on site, size, and cost while driving the project without any delays, because any delay only escalates our cost. I want to point out as an example our Boardwalk school building construction, which was on budget and on time, thanks to hiring of an OPM at the very early stages. What are some of the building size determinants? It should be able to fit all our apparatus with safe space between for rapid response, separate triage, isolation, decontamination, and storage space. It should meet all required current standards like NFPA, ADA, all different codes, and OSHA. Safe work, living space for staff, and turnout gear lockers, safe bunker rooms and bathrooms, and need for cistern to fill our apparatus. Remember that Boxborough does not have a public water supply, so we need water storage in terms of cisterns and also need tenders to carry water, unlike other towns that might be bigger than us, yet requiring only similar space as ours because they have public water. Funding for this will come from free cash. It will not have any effect on your fiscal year 25 taxes. It'll show proof of readiness to hire an OPM and professional services, and it'll also give us adequate appropriation to avoid any stalling and escalation cost. Having sufficient funds available and appropriated will assist in completing all the needed studies, analysis with OPM oversight, so we can bring back meaningful recommendations on site, size, and cost to subsequent town meetings so that you can vote on them. Please vote yes on Article 42 for the full amount of $500K so we can move the project along, which would allow us to bring back recommendations for you to vote in the next town meeting to move to the next steps. As most of you may know, the planning process began way back around 2012, and we still don't have a new fire station. Voting no or reducing the funding will delay the process. The more the delay, the more it costs. Escalation cost is 5% per year. Inadequate funding results in stalling the project while escalation the cost keeps increasing. If we had built the fire station 5 years ago, we could have saved 25% of the cost, roughly. It is not clear for how many more years the current station is going to be viable. What are our next steps? Hire an OPM and professional services to do site assessments and recommendations, conceptual designs, construction cost determination, go on to public forums, and which will culminate into a future town meeting for you to vote. As we get recommendations from the OPM, we intend to have multiple public forums to educate and update public on the progress and for feedback before we get to a town meeting for approvals for the next step. I want to point out that the town really needs the proposed $500,000 in order to complete these steps successfully. As I had mentioned earlier, past efforts by the town on planning the fire station fell short because of inadequate funding. Please vote yes on Article 42 without any amendments for the full amount of $500,000 so we can complete the much needed next steps with urgency and come back to you so we can proceed with our fire station. Thank you.
Okay, at the risk of being redundant, Priya, recommendation from the select board?
The select board votes unanimously.
Recommendation from the finance committee, please.
The Finance Committee recommends this article by unanimous vote. For full disclosure, I'm both the FinCom clerk and the Boxborough Building Committee vice chair and clerk. There is one important change between the motion and the article as written in the warrant. The original article had a split funding source of free cash and taxation. After the warrant went to press, the FinCom voted to move from a split use of free cash and taxation to 100% free cash. Why? First, it might be useful to some of you to explain free cash if you're new to municipal financing. Free cash is a state term of monies being available to Boxborough once Massachusetts certifies the amount available. There are a number of sources of dollars that feed into free cash, including, but not limited to, unspent dollars from the previous year's operating budget and 50% of ambulance reimbursements. Once the state certifies Boxborough's free cash, then those funds can be used to fund warrant articles. So back to what changed in the funding source from earlier in the year. The FinCom was originally quite concerned on the availability of free cash as it related to the FinCom policy. We agreed with the Select Board to a split in the funding source for this article. The Finance Committee watches incoming revenues with our town accountant. Our fourth quarter revenue projections are running higher than expected at approximately $200,000. Based on the projection of free cash from the town accountant for FY25, starting July, we were very comfortable in moving to 100% free cash usage to limit the impact of the taxation to you in the next year. The bottom line is that the FinCom is quite comfortable supporting this article with 100% free cash, and the FinCom is fully supportive of the amount called out in the motion.
Okay, thank you. Recommendation from the Capital Committee, please.
The Capital Committee recommends unanimously.
Okay, so before I go to the floor for discussion, I want to remind everyone about keeping discussion within the four corners of a motion. Firehouse is a very broad topic and context is important, so I understand a little latitude will be needed, but however, let's remember that the motion is about funding professional services to advance the project. Discussion about picking a site or how much space we need or what we're doing with the police station is getting a little ahead of the intent of this motion. So with that intro, yes.
Building committee recommendation, please?
Oh, certainly. Representatives of the building committee recommendation?
I was wondering. For the health and safety of our employees, to enable the proper maintenance of our apparatus and equipment and the efficient response to emergencies, the Boxborough Building Committee recommends Article 42, 12-0.
All right, with that, discussion from the floor. Name and address, please. Microphone to my right.
Robin Lazaro, 959 Hill Road. I move that the pending motion be amended. I believe you have my amendment.
We got it ready to go, Rajan? All right.
I'll read it.
Please read it out loud for everyone to hear.
To see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $150,000, more or less, for the purpose of procuring professional design services and other services related to the construction of a new fire station, or take any other action relative thereto.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. 3 minutes to explain the amendment and why it should be made.
Tonight, you have heard from the Select Board why we need a new fire station. This article is not about that. We clearly understand that a new fire station is needed and is long overdue. This article is about how much we need to spend now to bring recommendations for site size and cost to the next town meeting for a vote. We feel that the requested amount is too large given where the project stands at this point in time. We can get to yes with less. The Select Board has proposed we set aside $1.5 million of free cash for purposes they could not explain until this town meeting. As a matter of fact, the services described in the printed warrant article are not the same services that the Select Board presented tonight. That's because there's been some disagreement among the Select Board and Building Committee as to what the money is needed for. But they've asked for $500,000 to be used over the next 4 years, ignoring potential emergencies where that free cash could be used instead. We think $150,000 more, in addition to the over $210,000 we've already spent on studies and architects, will get us to where we need to be by the next town meeting. We do not need to spend $500,000 on experts between July 1 and the next town meeting, where hopefully site size and cost will be presented. For the reduced amount we're proposing, the architects and other experts can analyze up to 4 sites, including the current fire station site, and make recommendations to the Select Board to bring to town meeting. Even the Building Committee had recommended unanimously a reduction in the amount necessary for this step. It would be a waste of money to ask experts to do detailed designs on properties the town does not own. The only property being considered for the new fire station that is owned by the town is the current site. Any other site will require a vote to approve at an upcoming town meeting. The Select Board, Finance Committee, Building Committee are trying to persuade us that we can only move forward by setting aside $500,000 for services, including those of an owner's project manager, and that if we don't vote for $500,000, we will stall the momentum to move forward. The amount we are proposing will get us to the next step. We feel confident the momentum will continue with a smaller amount. Remember, there have already been numerous studies done, and approximately $30,000 is left to be spent with context architects. At a future town meeting, we will be asked to fund a new fire station that will cost approximately $40 million, including the possibility of purchasing land. Until the site decision is made, it's premature to spend large sums of taxpayers' money. We would just be putting the cart before the horse. Please vote for this amendment to reduce the amount from $500,000 to $150,000 to ensure responsible use of tax dollars. And I'm hearing Jean's voice now. Vote for less to get to yes. Thank you.
Recommendation from the Select Board on the amendment. While we're waiting for the Select Board, Vipers Day is coming up Saturday, June 15th at Flara Field. Sponsored jointly by the Boxborough District Minutemen and the Public Celebrations Committee, Public Celebrations and Ceremonies Committee. Day starts off at 9:30, Vipers' 4-mile road race, followed by a parade from the Blanchard School to Flara Meadows. At 11, that's at 11, presentation of the Golden Fife Award. Their fair will then commence and include food, children's games and activities, volleyball tournament, booths representing town organizations and a craft fair, There'll be live music throughout the afternoon. For more information or to sign up for a nonprofit booth, craft booth, road race, or volleyball, please go to www.pfeiffersday.org. If you'd like to get involved with helping with the planning of Pfeiffer's Day or helping on the day, please contact the Boxborough Minutemen website at boxboroughminutemen.org. Public celebrations, is the select board ready with a recommendation?
Yep. Select Board unanimously does not approve the amendment.
Recommendation from the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee unanimously does not support the amendment.
Recommendation from the Capital Committee.
And the Capital Committee does not support the amendment.
Recommendation from the Building Committee.
The Building Committee does not recommend the amendment.
All right, speaker at the microphone to my left, please.
So point of clarification, does that mean the amendment doesn't go forward?
No, we're discussing the amendment
Okay.
right now.
All right, so
We've
I
heard, yeah, it's been
okay.
moved and seconded on the amendment.
All right.
We've had recommendations from the
Okay, I'm not
boards
so- I'm not-
involved. We're going to the floor.
Okay,
Now, just a reminder, everybody, we're just discussing the amendment.
Okay, that's fine. I
So-
support the amendment. I'm John Markowitz, 71 Patch Hill Road, Boxborough, Massachusetts. So we're not talking, everyone agrees that we need a fire station. There's no question about that. That's not what we're here to talk about, okay? And everyone really wants our firefighters to have a great place and a safe place to live and work. Unfortunately, the article that we're discussing and the amendment, quite frankly, will not provide that, because it will be at least 2 years from now, at least, before we get a shovel in the ground to start to build a building. We need to, at some point in time, we need to take a look at what we can do for our firefighters' safety and health. And I think most people will agree that at some point an OPM will be required. The question is, at what time and when and how much money? I went to that meeting in Littleton at the fire department, at the fire station. I listened to what the chief said, and I talked to the vice chair of the building committee, Robert Bromley, okay? And I was quite impressed. I said, that definitely convinced me that we do need an OPM. But I followed up, because I followed up with Bob Bromley, the vice chair of the building committee, and asked him, when do you need an OPM? And he said to me, when you have a site and when you have rough design plans. And I said to him, well, we don't have any of those. He said to me, then you're too early. You're too early for an OPM. You'll be wasting your money until you have that in place. It may be different for a school, because the school receives state funding, and they have different rules in terms of when they need an OPM. But he said you'll be wasting your money until you have a site, until you have rough construction drawings. On top of that, they spent 6 months, the building committee, the town administrator, and the fire chief spent 6 months putting together requirements for what they would want in an OPM before they could go out to bid. They presented those requirements to town meeting, at a special town meeting. They got the funding for the OPM, and then they went forward. We're nowhere near there. We are so early in the process, which is why I think the amendment makes sense, because what we're going to do is we're proposing giving people money for what they need now, and it won't slow down the process, because you get the money now for what you need now, and we can keep going. Thank you.
Speaker at the microphone to my right, please.
Cindy Markowitz, Meadow Lane. I also am supportive of the need for a new fire station. What we're debating tonight is the timing and how we get there. My concerns are many, but I will focus on the financial concerns and management of the process to date. From a financial standpoint, we are already seeing a large tax increase this coming fiscal year. Last night, the town approved an operating budget of almost $28 million and several thousands in warrant articles. $28 million operating budget is a 42% increase from our operating budget just 10 years ago. The average residential tax bill will be increasing 9.6% to almost $14,000 a year. And we know that a fire station will be in the $35 to $40 million range and would add at least $1,200 to the average residential tax bill annually. The proposed expenditure from free cash is still using tax money, just monies that have already been collected. We heard last night that we are likely to see an override from Prop 2.5 in the coming year. I was told the good news last night by the Select Board that we had a recent increase in anticipated local receipts, which is what is allowing us to expend all of this amount of the original article, $500,000 in free cash, while still maintaining the 5% operating budget amount the FinCom wishes to maintain. But we're in difficult fiscal times. Wouldn't it be wiser to hold on to as much free cash now as we can to offset any unanticipated expenses and help offset some of the future costs that may be leading to the need for a budget override? My professional experience is in project management in the environmental consulting and engineering industry. My work include preparing site analyses for a variety of development sites. If I were to request $500,000 in funding from a client, I would most certainly identify a scope of work, tasks, and milestones for deliverables. What we are being asked with this warrant article, the original article, is to provide a check for $500,000 with no written scope of work, no proposal from any entity for the proposed use of these funds. The $500,000 estimate was developed when the Stowe Road site was initially selected based on dates from the warrant article being drafted right after the building committee's vote and a working group accepting a price, a $1.2 million sale price for that property. But we're now reconsidering several sites. However, there's been no effort on the part of the town to obtain a scope of work nor cost estimate for a formal site evaluation and a formal comparison of the sites, although this was suggested by several people at a recent building committee and select board meetings. As such, the proposed amendment amount of $150,000 is based on a review of the existing and prior contracts for work developed for some sites that are currently under consideration. As others have mentioned, only one of the sites is currently under town's control. Should another site be recommended, town meeting still needs to vote to purchase such land. We know that the purchase price for sites under consideration could cost over $1 million. Let's determine what site the building will be built on before proceeding with design services. Thank you very much.
Speaker at the microphone to my left, please.
Excuse me, Diana Lupari, 394 Littlefield Road. Beginning 3 years ago, as a member of the Select Board, I served as well on the Building Committee for almost 2 years until I was forced to resign because of health reasons. I've read all the documents, all the studies, all the cost estimates, past and present, and recently I've even read some documents that I had to obtain through a public records request. From the beginning of my tenure on the Building Committee, I and some other members urged the committee to communicate facts and figures to the public. There never seemed to be the right time to do that, and so here we are. You've heard tonight that we need to hire an owner's project manager, an OPM, to give the town professional advice and guidance. However, to quote a recent statement by a building committee member, an OPM is not a decision maker. In other words, an OPM is not there to tell the town what or where to build. It is the responsibility of the building committee to educate the public about the needs, the size, the cost, and the proposed sites or site under consideration. You've heard tonight that the OPM services will guide us through the duration of the project, and I'm not quite sure it was said, but it has been said. The cost of the OPM is factored as a percentage of construction costs, which in this case would be close to double the total ask in this article given the projected cost of this project. It is too early for the services of an OPM whose salary should really be bonded with the project cost as a whole. Unfortunately, the building committee has not yet fostered any real public dialogue about their preferred size of 24,000 square feet, almost triple the size of the current station, a project cost estimate of almost $40 million, and their overwhelming focus on 72 Stowe Road. The current fire station site hasn't been considered since 2018, and even though presented with some engineered drawings for 700 Mass Avenue, the committee hasn't conducted any real investigation of that site. There is no disagreement on the urgent need for a new fire station. We are not opposed to that at all. But let's go about the process logically and systematically, minimizing our costs along the way. This will be the biggest investment by far that this town has ever made. It will impact our tax payments significantly for years to come. Attempting to build any public building without some firm foundation of public support is a recipe for disaster and delay. This lack of a foundation is the real enemy of moving forward quickly to build our new and safe station. Vote yes on the reduced amount of $150,000 and ask the building committee to fairly evaluate all the possible sites first, along with reasonable size and cost. share that information with you in public discussions, and let you, the voters, have your say first before we spend additional dollars. Thank you.
Speaker at the microphone to my right, please.
Cheryl Mahoney, 188 Liberty Square Road. To Mr. Markowitz's point, it's been 14 years. He said it's too soon. 14 years. The two chiefs that originally proposed this work have retired after 14 years. If you haven't already pulled up the Boxborough Building Committee website on the town's website, I would strongly suggest that you do it now, and you scroll and scroll and scroll through the various studies, analysis, and otherwise. 14 years ago, also, the town had a proposal to buy the lot next to the police station to build this police combo fire station. It is now doggy daycare. The owner offered it to the town for $250,000. He sold it after town meeting turned it down because you know what town meeting said? It's too soon. We need more study. We don't want to spend that amount of money until we've done an analysis. 6 months later, he sold it to the doggy daycare center for $750,000. 14 years ago, the analysis was that this building, this combination building, would cost the town $29 million. You wait, you pay. So, I mean, to the point, the proponents of this amendment, there's a significant number of the proponents that have served on this building committee. If they felt information was not being generated, they had a voice at that table at that time. Our grandfathers built this building as volunteer firefighters with cinder blocks on the weekend. This is when we had a volunteer fire department with trucks that were basically pickup trucks with water tanks welded to the bed. We need to come into the 21st century. It's going to cost money, but how much is your public safety worth? Thank you.
Speaker at the microphone to my left, please.
Francine Oldie, 459 Sergeant Road. Article 42 asks for $500,000 of free cash to select a site and design a new fire station. As said, this amount is more than we need to get started on fire station decisions that have not yet been discussed with the public. Reducing the cost would cause no delay in giving voters the options they need regarding size, site, and cost of a fire station. Construction of buildings are broken into phases. We are in phase 1 that determines the size, site, and cost of the fire station. Decisions residents have not been invited to weigh in on. For years, the building committee has held open monthly meetings, but no public engagement. The public should be invited to look at a basic building as well as one with bells and whistles. Do we need a 24,000 square foot building, 3 times the size of our current station? Show us alternatives based on need. Of 4 possible sites, show us where a building best fits, and show us how much money different size buildings would cost on each site. Such clear comparisons will help voters make a well-informed decision next fall. Here are the logic steps in phase 1. 1, the public needs to understand what size building is best for the town and where it might go. The current site, 700 Mass Avenue or Stowe Road, or another site on Mass Avenue. We have to consider needs versus wants. 2, we need a comparison of sites, fair and equal, looking at the pros and cons. Placing a conceptual building footprint on top of each site to see what fits comes next. Is it 18, 20, 22, or 24,000 square feet? Then we next look at what the site constraints are. 3, we need to determine a realistic cost for each building on alternative sites based on size and site preparation. 4th and lastly, we need to weigh the advantages and disadvantages of size, site, and cost. This is phase 1, some of which the building committee has already done. The rest can be done with the help of a consultant for much less than $500,000. We do not need an OPM until we move from a conceptual design to schematics. As written, Article 42 goes way beyond what citizens need to discuss next fall. With the help from public input, let's start with a minimum amount of money, $150,000, to get the basics done. When the town agrees on the building size, site, and cost for a new fire station, we can take the next steps forward.
Speaker at the microphone to my right, please.
Mark Barbadoro, Old Harvard Road. So the issue is really, how do we get from here to a vote at fall town meeting that the select board, for a site that the select board has chosen? Owners, project managers, they don't design buildings, they don't create renderings or conceptual drawings, and they don't develop a cost per square foot. Design professionals do that, not owners, project managers. We are at a place where that can be executed for a very short amount of money. I think a lot less than $150,000. But let's make it big enough so that there is a buffer there that can be used to make sure that we get to this place. The biggest thing, the biggest delay that we've got has been the inaction of the board. They've been struggling to try and get a unanimous decision. When you have a big board like that, you're always going to have different points of view. And so they did get to a place. They had a 3/4 vote for a site. So what they really need now is some schematics, some renderings, a cost per square foot, bring it to the town next fall, and we'll vote on it. And if we like what we see, we'll vote for it. And if we don't, we won't. So the engagement that can be done between then and now costs us nothing. It just hold meetings, just invite the public out, get their input, and really listen to them when they tell you, I think you're spending too much money. So all of this can be done with $150,000. It's easily done. And I just wanted to leave one anecdote. I've worked on a building committee once that wanted to build a town hall. So they hired the OPM first, and the OPM hired the design professional to draw the plans. And they went full ahead. They designed the plans for the site. They started doing logistics. They even got trailers for the town staff to work out of. And when they went to town meeting and it was voted down, they didn't know what to do next. It took another couple of years because they were moving ahead with an owner's project manager. Homeless people actually moved into the trailers and started living in them. That's a true story. I don't want to tell you the town, but you don't need an owner's project manager. Their job is to execute, not to calculate price, not to create renderings, nothing. I have faith in the building committee. They can get this done by fall with context or another design professional. Thank you.
Speaker at the microphone to my left, please.
Lee Slade, 380 Burroughs Road. I agree with the need for a fire station. I don't hear any dissension on that. I also think we need a vote tonight to keep this project moving. Messing around with this thing for 10 years without making real progress and even picking a side or having a program is a little surprising. I have a lot of confidence in the select board. I have a lot of confidence in FinCom and the building committee, and I trust their judgment. But I have a lot of questions about this warrant. And I come from a place of about 48 years in the design business, the building design business, so I've seen a lot of projects delivered in a lot of different ways. That's my context, and I really have questions, not yet an opinion about how I want to vote on this, but first thing is I agree with the need for OPM. I know it's statutorily required, but it seems like we need a swamp guide who understands more about how to move this project along than we have been able to figure out as a town, and I think that's a good thing. I am confused about what the OPM is expected to deliver for $500,000 in the balance between managing a project and providing owner's representation versus design, because I look at this bullet list and I see at least 7 or 8 what I would consider to be design tasks. So my question is, are we getting an OPM to come in and pay for a designer out of his $500,000 or her $500,000? Or is this something we're expecting this OPM to do? That's sort of the number one question. Is the OPM bringing a design team? Do we have a proposal from one or more OPMs with a scope of services that aligns with this scope of service? Or is that something that's going to happen in the future? Any idea who the OPM will be, who will bring the right kind of skills that the town needs? A specialist in fire stations, I hope, a specialist in site analysis, or at least figuring out how to guide a small town through the issue of considering, you know, the site that we own or the sites that we have to purchase. This idea of OPM plus professional services is very confusing to me, because I see them as very different things, as was just stated. But an OPM is not just a watcher and a paper shuffler. A good OPM could be a very, very instrumental guide to helping this town move forward with this very important and very big project. I'm thinking $500,000. Yes, it's a big number, but it's really just the first tranche of money that's going to go to a very big investment by the town. And I would consider it sort of a design fund that would be drawn on to pay for appropriate professionals who are going to help this process move forward. So I've asked a number of questions. I don't know if I can get answers to those, but that would help me decide where I'm going to come down on the vote. Thank you.
Would the select board or town administrator care to address any of those questions? They were very explicit.
Certainly. The main need driving this, this article is the owner's project manager. That has been clearly defined by the select board and the building committee, and it was clearly communicated to the folks who visited the Littleton Fire Station a couple of weeks ago that we needed an owner's project manager sooner rather than later. I heard a little bit earlier that that's not what was said, but I was at that meeting, and I heard them clearly say we needed the owner's project manager sooner rather than later. I think that, you know, the town, while I'm a newcomer here, I can see that the town has, you know, talked about this for 14 years, actively worked on this with the building committee and volunteers for 10 years, has spent over $200,000, and I don't think we're any closer to a site or a design. We need someone to guide this process. So to answer your question, Lee, the OPM is the number one need in here. I was the one that wrote what was in the article. There's way too much. There's way too many specifics. It does include some design criteria, and that's when the motion was moved forward. It was to really just focus on owner's project manager and the services of the other people that they bring along the way. The OPM really, and the intention from what I heard from the building committee and the select board, is to get someone that's going to get this project on schedule and keep it on budget once it gets going. I hope that answers at least some of your questions.
It does. May I follow up?
Yeah, I think you had about 30 seconds left or so.
Thank you. So the site analysis, which is obviously a very important thing, and the programming activity, which is related, actually the first thing we should be doing is a programming activity. Is that something the OPM is going to guide or do?
That's something they're going to guide and not do. So there's this misconception that $150,000 is going to work through the selection of 4 sites. That won't get you an OPM or do the sites. It's about $200,000 to look at the 4 sites. Now, granted, there's already $50,000, part of which was alluded to earlier, has been spent on one site, but the other 3 sites still need analysis. So you're looking at $150,000 for that site analysis. That's not something that the OPM will do, but it's something that they will certainly guide the town on through the specific scientists, engineers, and consultants that would be doing that particular work.
So I'm still a little confused how far the OPM works for $500,000, and if you're going to come back with another request for $200,000 to look at the sites under the guidance of the OPM. Is that the intent?
Mr. Moderator, can I have Mary Brolin come and address, as she had worked with the OPM recently with the schools?
Yes, if it'll help answer the question, and if Mary's ready, willing, and able. Yeah, you can come to the podium to answer the direct question, yes.
I think he's asking a different question. I think he's asking, is the 500,000 that was originally proposed? Can't hear. Sorry. I think the gentleman is asking a different question. I think he's asking, is the 500,000 that was originally opposed for owner's project manager plus design services plus site analysis and all that work that needs to happen? Or is the 500,000 strictly for just the OPM?
Thank you for clarifying that. If that's the question, I'm prepared to answer that. So
Close
yes, the 500,000, that is for the OPM for the duration of the project. So we would go out with an RFP, to then select an OPM, and then also do site analysis, and then there would be some conceptual design work, not construction drawings, but to get us to the point of being able to select a site. And that was, but the OPM specifically, that's for the duration of the project, from now until the fire department moves into that building, plus other site selection criteria, as well as I mentioned, early design work, which importantly gets you to a price that you can vote on. I've heard 40 million tossed out twice. We did say that we would come with a price from where we were so far, and based on what Context Architecture has worked on with the Stowe Road site, that's a total project of just under 30 million. So just 40 million. I've heard 40 million. I've heard, prior to tonight, I've heard 20 million tossed out. 20 million is too low, 40 million is too high. We're talking about in the range of a very significant amount of money, about $30 million. Had this been built 5 years ago, it would have been $5 million less. If it happens in 5 years, it's going to be $5 million more. That's just based on 5% escalation rates with your labor and materials.
All right, speaker to the microphone to my right, please.
Jennifer Barrett, Wickham Road. I want to let it be known, Mass General Law, Chapter 149, Section 44A and a half, reads, a public agency, before entering into a contract for design services, shall contract for the services of an owner's project manager to serve as the public agency's agent and consultant during the planning, design, and implementation of a contract for the construction, reconstruction, installation, demolition, maintenance, and/or repair of any public building by the public agency estimated to cost no less than $1.5 million. Shall. That's your next step. I don't know how many qualified purchasing officials certified in Massachusetts by the Officer Inspector General are here. I am one. I know how this works. You have to hire an OPM in order to get this project moving and to preserve your best interests. I don't know how many of you have overseen the building of a fire station. I have. I am about 3 weeks away from occupancy on a brand new fire station in the town that I currently serve. I can give you all of the cost analysis for that entire $18 million build, which we started 7 years ago. The price went up every year that we waited to hire that OPM and those design services. And I will tell you, 2 years ago, design services alone were $223,000. The design recommendations under the OPM, $75,000. Just to get construction documents out of that architect, another $300,000. And that's for an $18 million fire station that is sized for 4 on-duty firefighters, 2 paramedics. you're gonna be looking at least a 3 to 6 year % increase. As stated, it was 5. I'm seeing 6 in materials alone. Just know that that cost of architectural and design services was 3.4% 3 years ago. Sorry, OPM selection was 3.5% a year and a half ago. Design services was 7.5%. The prices are going up.
Speaker at the microphone to my left, please.
Susan Bach, 59 Burroughs Road. I just have a few questions. The first is, what does an OPM do, and why do we need one? Why do we need one now? And then my next question is, if the cost is reduced to $150,000, what do we give up? What doesn't get done?
Those are direct questions. You can answer, please.
Yeah, I think this will be an appropriate time for Mary Brolin to come up and explain the OPM
All right,
piece.
now Mary's in the hot seat.
I'm Mary Brolin, 153 Guggins Lane. Yeah, thank you, Adam. I am currently the chair of the Acton-Boxborough School Building Committee, and we actually hopefully had our last meeting last Wednesday night. It has been a 7-year process. We engaged an OPM at the beginning of the process in our feasibility study, and I personally think it's critical. We were a committee of 20 people, and there's amazing expertise in the communities of Acton and Boxborough. But we were also, the majority of us work full-time jobs, and it's, you know, even if someone has this expertise, they have to be careful because they can't do it from their company's perspective. It's their personal perspective. And we have someone with environmental expertise and someone with engineering expertise and someone with legal expertise, but an owner's project manager brings it all together. Understand that it's a firm you're contracting with, not an individual, and so they have the access to all the expertise within their firm. So they bring a broad range of expertise to a committee of volunteers. And they provide critical support during the feasibility assessment. They help with the site assessment, with tests that need to happen, helping to bring in experts around environmental issues, placement issues. You know, I'm hoping we think about a green building. That takes different placement than if you're not considering that. They bring that expertise. They, in fact, helped us when we were hiring both the designer and the construction company. They put together all of the bid documents, and then when all the bids came in, they coordinated it all and provided packets to the committee that was selecting the design organization and the construction organization. They also, once the schematics are done, the designer budgets it out, but so does the OPM, because they are our agent and they're holding our best interests in mind. And so they're challenging the designer on, why do you need to spend that much? Why would you do it that way? And through all the stages, the early stage, the later stage, looking at, do we need that level of material? I'm going to tell you, the designers will build the most beautiful building you've ever seen. But we don't necessarily need the most beautiful building we've ever seen. And so do we need that fancy siding? Can we go with other siding? And they support you through that process. They do facilitate your decision making. They do not make decisions for the committee, but they absolutely facilitate your decisions. They help with the timeline. The timeline's critical. And they helped us build the whole package that we brought to this town meeting where you supported the full funding for the project. And that was a clear budget, a clear timeline, and they also helped us through the early stages to have information to bring to forums for the community to get their input and understand what we could and could not do. They also, later in the project, help to manage the budget. Again, you know, it's a lot of work. This is a lot of work that they're doing. We had somebody full-time on site through the whole building process. And the way this is worded, my understanding is this is from the beginning to the end for the OPM. It's not just for these early months. And so you need someone who's going to be there representing your interests daily. They also work with the construction company and the designer through issues that are going to arise through the building process, and always keeping our interests in mind to make sure we're getting the best value for our money. They help keep it on schedule and on budget. So yeah, that's what I'd share.
Mr. Moderator,
Susan,
the
yeah.
town administrator would answer the second part of the question.
Certainly, proceed.
So I think the second part of your question was what doesn't get funded if you do the 150,000. So I have a rough breakdown. The OPM up front is $75,000, and I just heard that number echoed. So I'm glad to hear that that I'm not putting lofty things out there. $75,000 just for the OPM, $150,000, as I mentioned earlier, for the site analysis. It's really $202,000 for the site analysis, but we already have one of the sites funded. We need to fund the other three. And then it's another $200,000 to bring conceptual design. We need conceptual design so you can see what you're getting and so that we know how much it's going to cost. That's where we come close to the $500,000. So what you don't get is you don't get an OPM, and you don't get conceptual designs. All you get is analyzing 3 sites or some other mix. You don't get what you need to get from here to voting for a fire station. I think doing that, by having 2 of those things fall off the table, you don't get a fire station on time. So you add that 5%, per year. So if the project stalls, 6 months, based on what I said earlier, about a $29 million project, if it stalls 6 months, there's $750,000 lost. The OPM will pay for itself with the efficiencies they provide to the project. As it was mentioned a number of times, an OPM's job is to keep you on schedule and on budget. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Speaker at the microphone to my right, please.
Rich Gazzardi, 92 Reed Farm Road. So I'm all for saving money. I'm not aligned with a reduction and an amendment to the $150,000. What's not clear to me is what's different with this amendment from what we've been doing for the last 10 years. I think I heard we spent about $200,000 for various and sundry design efforts. The building committee I give a tremendous amount of credit to, because this is nothing short of an impossible project with a team of 12 or so many volunteers trying to do their best. Mm-hmm. The reality is $150,000, there's no description of the scope that we're going to get for $150,000. I think our town administrator, Michael Johns, just described what is within the $500,000 that's part of the original article. So it's just not clear to me that we're doing anything different than we've been doing for 10 years. And here we are tonight wondering when we're going to get a fire station that I think we all agree we need. And I've heard that the designers are going to do the work that needs to get done, and then we'll be able to make a decision. The reality is the designers are going to go do the design based on what the building committee says, this is our vision. And I'm hearing that the 150 doesn't even get us the design. This is a complicated effort. I'm hearing there are multiple sites. I'm hearing there are multiple design configurations. It's not just, here's the site, here's the design, get me the concept, and then we'll go hire the OPM. This OPM from the get-go is going to be helping to coordinate all of that effort as Ms. Brolin described. So often, and in my professional experience, decisions that are made early on in a project have dire consequences in the long run on the project. So it's great that maybe we can save a year, and that might be 7%. I'm more concerned about if we shortchange this project right now, we're going to make some critical mistakes and make some decisions that we might be able to avoid with the right project manager directing and guiding and coordinating all of that design activity. So I'm going to encourage town meeting to vote this amendment down. I appreciate where the proponents are coming from. I'm all for saving money. I'm afraid that this is going to overly constrain this project. We're not going to get what we need, and we may end up paying more in the long run. Thank you.
Speaker at the microphone to my left, please. Hi. Point of order.
Can't hear you.
You have a point of order?
Yeah, it's a point of order. A number of people were actually on the first committee, and maybe some of those can share some of the facts. Some of the facts being thrown around are
Okay,
not
so
correct.
if anyone wants to speak, they can go to the microphone as we've been doing. David, if you've been on the first committee, please get in line,
Okay.
and we'd love to hear what you have to say. Speaker to the microphone on my left here, please.
Jim Connolly, 152 Flag Hill Road. I support a new fire station. I think it's desperately needed and has been for a long time. Having said that, you're proposing $500,000 to hire a project manager for a project that does not have a scope, does not have a schedule, and does not have a cost, and does not have a design, and does not have a site. What is that project manager going to be managing? Okay. One of my job titles for my day job is I am a what's called a contracting officer's representative for a federal agency. So when we set out a contract, I am the person that the OPM reports to, you know, and I tell him what to do, and I provide him with a scope and a schedule and a cost. Before I can go out and get money for any project, I have to write a detailed scope of work. I have to write an independent cost estimate that shows every aspect of what this project is going to cost. And then I have to present it to the people that hold the government's money before they will give me a cent. We are the people that decide whether or not you get the money. And we have not been provided any of that information so far. The $150,000, as I understand it, is designed to give us 6 months to get that information out and present it to the town, along with something about a design, something about a site, something about a schedule, something about a cost, and then we can vote, and then we can proceed. And I hope we don't take any longer than 6 months to do that. You know, I've been hearing people talk about other OPM all along. And I was kind of confused at first, because when somebody talks, when I hear people talking about OPM, I think they're talking about other people's money. And it's like, you know, it's like, oh, we're going to do this with other people's money? Okay, well, it's not other people's money, it's our money. And I appreciate the work that the folks have done so far trying to get this fire station completed. I just don't think throwing $500,000 at a problem with no scope, no cost, and no way to evaluate what the OPM is doing is the right way to proceed. Thank you.
Speaker at the microphone to my right, please.
Yes, Mr. Moderator, Owen Neville, Middle Road. We've heard from our homegrown, born and brought up in Boxborough, happens to work now in another community. We've heard the general laws from her. We've heard that she's been involved in a project and that the OPM is required. The previous speaker, the immediately previous speaker, a lot of what will happen with the expert guidance we're going to get with the full amount is the scope of things that you talked about. Just help us to nail that down, just to nail all those things down as we go forward. If this article passes at such a low amount, it will serve only to slow walk this project and prove to the members of the fire department that we care nothing of their working conditions or their health. The fire station is in deplorable condition. If offered space there, I think CODA would refuse. Everybody know CODA? If any part of that place gets shut down for any reason, what needless costs will the town incur? please vote this amendment down. Please let's go for the full amount and not continue to slow walk this. I'm on the building committee. I have been on the latest iteration of the building committee, which was stood up just over 4 years ago. Please vote this down. Please help your select board, your finance committee, your building committee, your capital committee to get this to fruition, to get us going. We've gone nowhere in 14 years. Thank you.
Speaker at the microphone to my left, please.
Rita Gibbous, Grossman Depot Road. Boy, I'd like to do the whole thing for 150, but anyway. What's resonating with me, my professional background is healthcare, not public safety. That being said, we all agree, I don't want to waste another dollar. I don't want to waste another day on delaying this fire station. That being said, in looking at OPM, just clarify, my sense of the OPM is that what we need is a conductor. We have all this talent. We got the violin player and the clarinet player. They're all volunteers. We need a conductor. And so my understanding is that the OPM will accelerate our process, will coordinate the process, that we will be able to analyze, I believe there's 4 sites, we'll be able to analyze the 4 sites, we'll be able to have public meetings and say, here is the data. Let's make a diagnosis and a treatment plan. Is that correct? Is that what the OPM is designed to do?
Yes.
Okay.
They are supposed to, they will give us recommendations, they will give us the next steps, and
Okay.
we finally make the decision.
Okay, and they're not going to make the decision for us, and we're not going to start building something and have town meeting vote it down. We're going to bring the data to town meeting with budgets and designs and optimum expense for our money. Okay, based on a little bit of research that I've done, which, I trust our town administrator, because his data sounded better, it looked like it was going to cost a little more than $75,000 per year based on median salary of an OPM in Massachusetts. My question is, the $500,000, that's not just for 1 year, correct?
That's correct. But I will tell you, there are other design needs that are going to come later. Like this, the $500,000 does not get you construction drawings. This gets you
Right.
conceptual drawings and
To make
OPM.
decisions. We're gathering data to make decisions. We're like doing the lab tests and getting the x-rays and all this other stuff. Okay. So the $500,000, if we do not spend it all, it stays in free cash.
Not exactly.
Would you care for Maria to address that specific question?
So, Rita, it's coming out of free cash. It's being encumbered. So it ends up in a line item, 500,000, and we will use that. If for whatever reason we don't spend all of that for the OPM, or in 2 years, for whatever reason we cancel it, we don't need this anymore, we're not doing this anymore, then that money will flow back into free cash.
Okay, all right, but there's...
we don't spend it. We encumber it, so we save it, but it's
Right.
technically still on the balance sheets. We just can't use it for other things.
Right, like a 529 fund, but your kid gets a scholarship and off it goes. Okay. Okay, well then it seems like 150 is not enough to accomplish what needs to be done and get us to a town vote in the fall. As much as I would like to support this, it just sounds like it's not quite the right amount. And it sounds like if we appropriate 500, we have enough money to bring in the OPM, we bring in the conductor, we orchestrate this, and we have something to vote on in the fall, and we can get our poor firefighters out of a tent. Okay, thank you.
Speaker at the microphone to my right, please.
West Folks, 155 Stowe Road. So I just wanted to provide a little context of why the Select Board took a little bit of time to discuss it, and it was mostly because of me.
Wes, can you tip your mic up a little bit
sorry.
for everyone to hear, please? Thanks.
So it was mostly because of me that it took so long. I was really on the fence, and I actually shared a lot of the same concerns as Lee did regarding this. And so, for context, I'm hoping to be here for the next 40 years, so I fully intend to pay for this full cost of this fire station. But the building committee has 13 members, so that means that we've been working on this for more years than we have members of the committee. And at work, when we have committees or meetings of people with more than 5 people, not much gets done. And I'm not saying this to degrade or whatever, it's just science, I hope. But effectively, we have, as a town, been working to move towards more professionalization of services. And so I do disagree a bit with some of the select board report that was given yesterday in terms of why we have much more stability now in town. And a lot of it is actually because we have taken the time and investment as a town to get these professional services, get the assistance that are needed. And so these are the people that are really helping to guide and direct the committees. Like Alex Wade, our town planner, has been doing a phenomenal job. And so in listening to this discussion, I do agree with Lee in the sense that it is a lot of money. And I actually agree with everyone here because I think nobody's saying that it's a short amount of money. But what I really see this is doing is just giving us some professional guidance and saying, here's somebody that's now responsible as their sole job to make sure that we are getting to that next step. And I don't really like to say this, but it's like herding cats when you have a meeting that large. And I mean, look at Congress, that's kind of like herding cats too, and they don't really get much done. But so mainly, I don't really like spending a ton of money, but I do see the necessity of it. And so unfortunately, I don't agree with this amendment, but that's just me, so.
Speaker at the microphone to my left, please.
Megan Connor, 70 Mayfair Drive. Starting from the beginning of a project in the pre-planning phases, project management efforts can include secure funding, writing and approving grants, selecting the site, cost modeling, determining the appropriate project delivery method, providing conceptual cost estimates, developing a master plan, and facilitating public outreach. On a much smaller scale, we just did exactly all of that with Liberty Field. We secured it on time without interruptions to our own day-to-day operations as a volunteer and a resident of the community. As Mary stated, many of our boards and commission members are volunteers. And I think having a fire prevention plan, the costs needed to evaluate the risks and prepare your space before a potential disaster occurs are minuscule in comparison to the potential costs of materials and labor that could be required at the last minute, as Jennifer stated that she's just recently working on in the town that she's working in. Preparation also allows you to minimize damages or prevent them altogether. While some residents may not want to spend the additional funds for a project manager in the beginning, they are appreciative when their efforts and projects run without interruptions from their day-to-day operations and are completed on time, within budget, and without litigation. As construction project experts, the project manager will also look for other opportunities throughout the project while in close coordination with the procurement officer and our town administrator, and the project can be brought back on track and on time. So I urge you to reject this amendment. Thank you.
Speaker at the microphone to my right, please.
So we heard a couple of different cost estimates for an owner's project manager. I think the TA said $75,000 would cover it. I heard a woman who sounded very credible saying, I think it's 3% of construction cost is what could be expected. So a couple of problems with 75,000 is that I work in that industry, and you can get a job pounding nails for more than $75,000. The higher powered guys in the building industry, they tend to earn a lot more than that. So 75 probably going to pay for half of his year, and we're going to employ him before we get started so that we can have him around. But if the number is 75,000, can someone up there who's good with math tell me how big of a fire station that would, that value would bring? Is it like $2 million or $2.5 million, or is it like 25 million or $30 million? You look lost. Can I help you?
Well, I'm not sure if that's a rhetorical
Yeah,
question.
it's a direct
I said
question.
earlier that the cost estimate we got based on the Stowe Road from Context is about 29 million. I have some estimates scribbled down in front of me. If they're low, I apologize. Maybe it is higher. I did hear a couple of people say that, echo a number of that. If it's not higher, then I apologize for giving you bad math.
I didn't mean to be insulting, honestly.
And if we're talking about cost of a hypothetical fire station, we're kind of on the boundaries of four corners here. This is, the motion's about...
I was talking about the cost of an owner's project
Okay, so if it's the
manager,
owner's
right?
rep, that's
And that was part of
definitely in
part of
balance.
the four corners is the owner's project manager. So I was trying to figure out if we have enough money allocated for it. Anyway.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So I don't think that we will have to go back to the well anyways, I think, for the owner's project manager down the road. And I don't think that you have really carefully figured out this number, because it came out to a nice, neat $500,000. It's as if, you're kind of rushing the number. So I would recommend, since I know, a couple other things, that same credible woman who talked about how much it would cost for an owner's project manager, she also said that by law you need to have one if you have design services, create a design for a building. But we've been hiring contacts in other design firms to draw renderings for 10 years. So I know that we can do it without having the owner's project manager employed at the time. And all I'm asking is, you have a vote from the building committee. It's 75% in favor of the site. So hire somebody for a little money, draw some renderings, get a cost per square foot, and put a number together for fall town meeting. And at fall town meeting, put in the cost for design services and drawings and an OPM. And then let's see if the town wants to buy it. And we can move forward there. I think that is very fast and it's very efficient. Thank you.
Speaker at the microphone to my left, please.
Mary Nadworski, 70 Stonehenge Place. I move the question.
It's been moved and seconded that we stop debate on the amendment and go forward and vote on the amendment. So this requires 2/3 vote to stop debate so we can move forward with a vote on the amendment. All those in favor of stopping debate, raise your green cards. All the cards down, all opposed? That carries by the 2/3 required. We're now going to vote on the motion of the amendment, which proposes to reduce the amount to $150,000. So if you vote in favor of it, we go back to the original motion with the 150 plugged in. If it's defeated, we go back to the original motion as originally motioned with the 500. So, all in favor of the motion to amend to the 150 amount, raise your green cards. All those opposed, raise your green cards. That fails by a majority. Back to the original motion. Seeing no one at a microphone, or do we have someone at the microphone to my right on the original motion?
Yeah, Casey Cornett, Picnic Street. I've heard two different things, and maybe it's just me, about how we're going to spend the $500,000. $500,000 is encumbered, I hear from the Finance Committee, to pay for the project manager for the duration of the project. That makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense is how are we going to pay for the site studies, the conceptual drawings, and some other things to be ready for fall meeting? Where is that money coming from? Because I've heard that that's what the $500,000 is going to give us. It's not. It's encumbered to pay for the project manager for the duration of the project. Or have I misunderstood?
You want to take it or you want me? It is encumbered to pay for project manager This funding allows for hiring of an owner's project manager in the continued design work to bring forward plans for actual construction for the new fire station, which includes, so it is encumbered for what is in this warrant article. So that includes OPM, it includes the drawings, and I don't want to say which kinds of drawings because I don't want people to, they're not construction drawings, I know that. Engineering, site selection, all of that is within that $100,000. Because that 500,000, I'm sorry, 500,000, that's what's listed in this warrant.
So where in the warrant do I see what we are going to be voting on in the fall? Are we or are we not
is that
going
the
to have a
motion
site study?
states
Are we or-
professional services.
But it does not put a time on it. That does not say that this is going to pay to bring in front of the town a site as the primary recommendation in the fall meeting. It doesn't say that. That's what we need. The fire department needs a decent working environment. No one in this room disagrees with that. We're having a problem. We spent 14 years doing it, didn't get there. Now we're going to hire somebody to help. Okay, let's put a deadline on it. Tell us what we're going to see as a deliverable for this money in the fall town hall. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
I can't support it without knowing what we're going to get, when we're going to get it.
So bullet number 3, I'm sorry, this is a select board answer, but bullet number 3 specifically says analysis of sites. So that is part of the scope of the OPM, part of this 500,000. If you look at bullet number 3
Excuse
within
me,
the
I don't want to
warrant.
interrupt. I understand that. I understand analysis. I want to know when the analysis is going to be done and a recommendation will be brought to the town to move this project forward. It's the critical path.
Yeah.
A project manager thinks about a critical path.
Yeah, we first need to, after we get this article passed, we will have to get the OPM, and they will help us with all the site analysis, the conceptual designs, and all of that. And as they are coming up with the recommendations, we plan to have public forums where we will discuss the recommendations that were put forth by the OPM and what the building committee then comes up with their own recommendations from the recommendations that we have got, and we will put all of that with the public forum. And eventually that'll help us to get to the next town meeting. We don't know the timeline it's going to take before we get all these designs and everything taken care of. We don't know how long it's going to take in terms of getting all
I'm not
these
trying
things.
to be argumentative with you. I'm just trying to
No,
go
no,
back to, I think
agree.
everyone in the room is frustrated by the
Yeah.
fact that we haven't moved this forward.
Yeah.
A gentleman, I can't remember who was experienced in this area, says you define the deliverables. I'm just asking, is there a timeline that's going to be given to the OPM that says, thou shall bring a recommendation as to site to somebody by a given period of time? So the OPM has a statement of work for the first deliverable, which is the site. And I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing an open-ended schedule of analysis and meetings.
No, it'll start with the first site analysis first, but the site analysis, we don't know how long it's going to take. That'll be in their first line of business, right? That they, for the OPM to do is to help us with the site analysis and come up with recommendations
Why
for the
don't
site.
we know how long it's going to take? We define the work schedule. We say we want the deliverable in this time period at a quality level of work. Can
Yeah.
you deliver it? Or you're not qualified to take the work.
Which is true, but then again, the site analysis things can happen, right? With the engineering studies and other things, when we try to do the site analysis, we might have to add things
Agreed.
to the analysis that
Agreed.
can change your timeline. So we would have
So
to
we
sit
could
and
slip
come
the
up.
schedule again. We
Yeah.
could be here in the fall,
Yeah.
hearing a report that the engineering's taking longer than planned.
Yeah.
The OPM failed. I just can't vote for this without a basic understanding of a timeline. That's our problem as a town. 14 years. There's a lot of passion in this room. There's a lot of experience in this room. My time's expired. Thanks.
Speaker to the microphone to my left, please.
Eric Mishnevez, 130 Flag Hill Road. This $500,000 includes an OPM, but one of the scope items that was in the warrant was schematic design drawings. Those are typically provided by an architect and not an OPM. Does this $500,000 include money to hire an architect to do that schematic design?
So within this, it will get us to conceptual design. It will not get us to schematics. And again, I took fault early on for some of the details in the warrant. What you see is up here is what you're voting on. And as I alluded to, there will be more design money needed down the road, but this pays for an OPM, it pays for site analysis, and it pays for schematic drawings to where you can get to a price of a facility that you can vote on, but it does not necessarily get you the schematic drawings.
I'm not sure if I just understood that. Are schematic drawings intended to be included as part of the 500,000? Like, we'll get schematic drawings to look at?
They're not.
They're not, okay. Okay, so conceptual drawings, you would anticipate that we would be able to get conceptual drawings for this $500,000 budget?
That's correct.
Okay. And are you expecting the OPM to develop those conceptual drawings?
No, those would be design professionals that will be coordinating with the OPM, and the OPM answers to the building committee.
Okay, and those design professionals are funded under this $500,000?
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Speaker at the microphone to my right, please.
Yeah, Dave Fall at 120 Cobley. As Yogi Berra once said, I'm having deja vu all over again. So I think I was on the second design committee with Les Fox and Maria and so on and so forth back in the mid, 8 years ago or so. And I'll give you just a couple of examples here. People are talking about site. If you go back into the files, you will find a color-coded diagram, several revs of it, that color-code every possible site up and down 111. We looked at everything from eminent domain. We invested engineering in evaluating the NEC site. We invested engineering in evaluating the front of the Cisco site that's now the biotech company. We invested engineering at the site next to the current town garage. There was a lot of work done in what could we buy, what could we take from eminent domain. In the end, we opted not to pursue eminent domain because we didn't think that that was a rational path. We also looked at the Stowe site. So there's a lot of information here. I hear people referring, we haven't spent engineering dollars on any of these things. That's what the $200,000 went to. It also went to developing a series of conceptual diagrams and pricing and so forth associated with it. These were open meetings. People would attend on occasion. There was a regular communication at town hall, kind of exactly what we're going through right now. In fact, it feels to me, deja vu all over again. So why did it fail? So what was brought in front of the town was basically a $20 million proposal back when the interest rates and bonding were going to work pretty well because they were quite low. And it was defeated, and it was defeated quite soundly because $20 million is a lot of money. And I remember talking to Maria just before the vote, and I said, my fear is not that we haven't done our work, not that we don't have schematics, not that we've walked half of these properties, not that we have these various ideas and that we've evaluated the trade-offs, but that we've failed to market the concept into the town. And I don't remember the exact vote, but it wasn't actually all that close. It was voted down. Nobody stood up and said, we don't need a fire station. Everybody stood up and said, we need a fire station. They said, we don't need one for $20 million. So here we are again in a poor bonding situation looking at, I believe the $30 million number. I think that's pretty much in line with what I would have expected. And we're spending all this time talking about OPMs, but that's not why the first proposal before town meeting failed. And I think that it's important to understand what's happened historically. The effort that went into and the engineering dollars that went into evaluating all these possible sites and so forth and the conclusions that were made by a number of very, very competent people. And my fear is that we're in the process of redoing exactly what we did before, and we're going to put a $30 million number in front of town meeting, and people are going to show up, say, we definitely need a fire station, and they're going to vote it down. Thank you.
Speak at the microphone to my left, please.
Mary Nedworski, Stonehenge Place. I move the question.
It's been moved and seconded that we stop debate and vote on the motion. This is just a motion right now to stop debate. All those in favor of stopping debate, raise your green cards. Cards down. All opposed? That carries by the 2/3 required. Vote on the motion on the screen. We're back to Article 42 as originally written. All those in favor, raise your green cards. All those opposed, raise your green cards. That passes by majority. Motion under Article 44. All right, so Kathy, let's pause for a moment while people are exiting. All right, if you're remaining in the room and not exiting, please remain in your seats and attention to the podium, please. That means stop talking. FinCom, take your seats, please. All right, I'll ask again that we'll have a motion under Article 44, please.
Getting a little bit of a complex because it seemed like people walked out on me last night, too. I move that the town amend the Boxborough zoning bylaw, section 6.6.2, by adding the language in the bold italics as printed in the May 13, 2024 annual town meeting warrant. And further, that non-substantive changes to the numbering in the zoning bylaw be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format.
Moved and seconded. Discussion from the planning board?
Excuse me one second. The planning board, as you know, did a comprehensive revision of the zoning bylaw. And when the town does the zoning, it's sent to the Attorney General's office to see that it is within the four corners of the enabling legislation that the state has undertaken. Well, when it went there, they picked up on the commercial dump issue because they had done more recent enabling legislation, and they bounced it back to us to say that we were not entitled to exclude it. What they did not have adequate information to understand is that this town, decades ago, created this prohibition, and therefore we should be entitled to some grandfathering. So there is a provision by which you can address the Attorney General's office directly, but that could be a protracted process, and it was the recommendation of town council that we cure that by putting it before the town meeting once again, basically to revote and adopt that as our intention. I guess that's my summary.
And for the record, the planning board recommendation?
Oh, I'm sorry. It was unanimous, 5-0.
Recommendation from the Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends unanimously.
Seeing no one at a microphone at the floor, all in favor of Article 44, raise your green cards. Cards down, all opposed. That carries by the 2/3 required. Motion under Article 45, please.
I move that the town amend the zoning bylaw section.
Yeah, can you pick the mic
Sorry.
up a little bit, Kathy?
I move that the town vote to amend Boxborough zoning bylaw section 4.2.2 and 5.3 subsection E as printed in the May 13th, 2024 annual town meeting warrant, and further, that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the zoning bylaw be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the zoning bylaw.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion from the planning board?
At the last town meeting, we made amendments to the apartment or accessory dwelling usage provision of the bylaw. And one of our members, at a much closer reading of the bylaw, discovered that we had a previously existing provision that called out that there could be no more than one dwelling unit on a single-family dwelling lot. And in order to reconcile the obvious contradiction and prevent being stalemated on this, the amendments that you read here carve out the exception so that for the accessory dwelling unit provisions, that provision will not apply. That was also recommended by the planning board by unanimous vote.
Recommendation for the Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends unanimously.
In the moving of it, I was also advised that in the bylaw, in the warrant, it says that a majority vote is required, that we've been subsequently advised by town council that it's more comfortable having it 2/3, which is the usual vote for a zoning article.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends unanimously.
Am I seeing anyone at a microphone? No, I am not. Oh, yes, microphone to my right, please.
Thank you. David Naparstik, Box Mill Road. It talks about a setback. Does it also talk about septic systems and wells and capacity?
What?
The amendment or the change in our bylaw addresses setbacks for the units. Is this also included approval by the Board of Health for wells and capacity of septic systems?
The amendment is only to address the bold italic text in the warrant.
To allow for?
So to allow for more than one dwelling unit on a lot.
Okay.
By application of this accessory dwelling unit provision.
Will the Board of Health then have a role in establishing that the septic?
Absolutely, David. You've been on the Board of Health, and that was one of the really educational parts for the planning board, was to learn that the Board of Health has its own criteria, and they're dictated by the state guidelines as well.
So that does
So
not
you
have
have to comply with that,
Okay.
yes.
So you do not have to include that in this amendment?
No, that will apply, separate jurisdiction, Board of Health, you have to apply with Board of Health. This is just to clear up that contradiction in the prohibition of 2 units on a
Thank you.
single lot.
Seeing no one at a microphone to my right again.
All right, I have a question. I don't know how relevant this is, but, several years ago, my mother came and lived with us, and I'm just wondering what it means when you have accessory apartments. Like, if we had decided that we wanted to make like a separate entrance for her and sort of make it an actual little home for her within our building, would that have been forbidden by this article?
Okay, so we're in the Four Corners slippery slope here with the last 2 speakers. This is strictly an amendment to the current accessory dwelling unit bylaw that we already have that allows for these things. And I don't know, Kathy, if you can clarify the amendment intent a little more?
Right. It was amended as recently as the previous town meeting, so you may not be familiar with it, but the provisions are there that would define what would be an accessory dwelling unit. So I'd refer you to that.
Okay, I guess I'm not clear on.
What's that, West Point of order? Oh, Trina, please name and address. Trina Toops, Pine Hill Road. Took care of that for you. Seeing no one else at the microphone. All in favor, raise your green cards. Cards down. All opposed, raise your green cards. That carries by the 2/3 required. Ms. Sundaram, could I have a motion to dissolve the May 13th, 2024 Boxborough Annual Town Meeting?
I move to dissolve the May 13th, 2024 Boxborough Annual Town Meeting.
It's been moved and seconded. Seeing no one at a microphone, all in favor, raise your green cards. All opposed, raise your green cards. That carries by majority. Thank you for coming, and good night, everybody. Well done.